But it was Muhammad Ali Jan Yousafzai, the local military historian, who told the expedition about the last stand of the Pathans on Machai Peak itself. Muhammad Ali explained how the Pathans had withdrawn to the peak at 9,970 feet, from where they waved their banners, beat their drums and fired down on the 1st Brigade, spread out on the plateau below. But at 3 p.m. on the 5th of October 1868, the heights were assaulted by the 1st and 5th Gurkhas, the 20th Punjab Native Infantry and the 19th of Foot. And there the Pathans suffered a terrific bombardment from the guns, and the Pathans lost many men from the shell fire from the Peshawar and Hazara mountain batteries, fled before the bayonets of the assaulting troops. He told us that 20 or 30 wounded Pathans hid in a network of caves on the summit, whilst the remainder fled down the wooden slopes towards the river Indus. They remained undetected in the caves for 4 days, whilst the peak was occupied by the British and Imperial Indian troops. However, it was the ability of the Royal Horse Artillery to get 6 of the heavy Anderson guns strapped to elephants onto the misty summit, and their ability to fire the guns at will onto the Pathan villages below, which finally brought the campaign to an end. The Pathans conceded on the 9th of October 1868. And after a march of strength through the surrounding valleys, the 19th of Foot and the rest of the brigade returned to their tented camp at Ogi after 21 days without shelter or bedding. It was another typical small campaign by Victorian soldiers on the northwest frontier. But today there's no such trouble, and the present-day Green Howards left the Black Mountain tribesmen as friends.
And 29 years ago, when the sun never set on the British Empire, few dared to take on the might of Her Majesty's armed forces. But there was one remote corner of the globe where our lads met their match, the infamous northwest frontier. It was in 1868 that the Green Howards, who've always recruited in this region, clashed with fierce tribesmen in what's now Pakistan. Well, a small expedition of modern-day Green Howards has just returned from that area, and this time their welcome was a little warmer.
The leftovers of an almost forgotten conflict fought more than a century ago and half a world away. But now, thanks to the meeting of 2 old enemies, those harsh times are being remembered. Exactly 129 years ago, these tranquil hills echoed to the sound of gunfire and the screams of the wounded. The 19th Regiment of Foot, part of what's now the Green Howards, was embroiled in one of Queen Victoria's small wars. The 3-week campaign through the northwest frontier's Black Mountains was to subdue the fearsome Pathan warriors. Now the Green Howards are back, this time to pinpoint the battle sites and to search for artifacts. And fortunately, the local Pathans didn't bear a grudge.
I was slightly worried because the Pathans have a code called pukhtuun, which is 3 things. The first is revenge. And if you do the Pathan a bad turn, he will come back and kill you. And even someone who might have been in an operation in 1946 against the Pathans, if he returned to that area, they had every excuse to kill him, to pay back. The second one was that you're allowed sanctuary in that area if you're a fugitive, and they'll help you. And the third thing, which I was lucky to receive, was hospitality. And a Pathan will give his life for you if you come under his protection.
In 1868, these superb and resourceful fighters used homemade flintlocks against the soldiers. Today they're still armed to the teeth, usually with Kalashnikovs, but the ancient guns still have pride of place.
There's an awful lot of oral history, and this is passed on by grandfather to son to grandson and so on. And all the Pathans that I met up on the top of the Black Mountains knew the story of the expedition in 18...
where their great-grandfathers had been occupied. They knew where the attacks had come in, how the Pathans had tried to attack the British guns. They knew the fact that they had elephants on top of the mountain. All this, in many cases, quite new to me.
Once a battlefield had been identified, the members of the 1st Battalion turned their hands to a little archaeology.
When we got to the area, we gridded it out, measured everything up, and by gridding it, you can then very carefully use a metal detector. And of course, when it starts beeping, you know there's metal underneath. And of course, the very first thing we turned up was a button and a bullet head. We found all sorts of things, from badges of rank, a very beautiful silver Victorian badge, a crown, which they would have worn on their collars in those days. And this was possibly the rank of a lieutenant colonel.
It was the battalion's first trip abroad after a stint in Bosnia. Compared with that and what the Victorian soldiers had to endure, this was a picnic.
One felt very humble in a peculiar way, because one was aware on reading that the Victorian soldier was quite a tough egg. But I had no idea how tough this must have been. We found ourselves short of breath at 9,900 feet. It was bitterly cold. We were in September. It's now October when the actual campaign started. There was snow on the ground at times, and yet these men had no shelter and no bedding, nor did they have for nearly 21 days of the campaign. They then had the problem of the Pathans attacking them en masse, the Pathans cutting up people with the famous Khyber knife. They must have been very frightened, I would imagine, too.
The 1868 campaign lasted 3 weeks. Just a few of the 2,000 Green Howards were wounded, but some of the 7,500 Indian troops with them were killed. Of the 4,000 Pathans, between 500 and 1,000 lost their lives. Now, though, old enemies are able to meet face-to-face in friendship, their war not forgotten, but perhaps at last forgiven.